What's up everyone, Petko here. Today we're going to talk about 9.1 Season 2 official Elemental Shaman Guide for Mythic Plus, and I'm going to give you my insights of how I intend to play this season, and we're going to cover several important topics. I'm going to start with the Covenant discussion, why, where, when, continue with the talents, builds, stats, Souldbinds, Conduits, enchants, Trinkets, Domination Sockets, Anima Powers, and at the final I'm going to include some playstyle. So I'm going to break it down and I'll put some timestamps so you guys can skip. Oh yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so first thing, the most important thing, what Covenant should I focus on? Should I go Ventir or Night Fae or Kyrian or Necrolord? I always recommend pick whatever you prefer. If you play like below 20 keys, it doesn't really matter. Shaman is very high DPS spec regardless of what Covenant you play, but I always recommend two Covenants. One is Night Fae Korean and the other one is Necrolord Bonesmith Hammer. Those two are very close on par and it's pretty much a situational. I prefer to play Night Fae because it has slightly more DPS output, but Necro provides a lot more group utility. Necro is a rare Covenant to have and also has a Fleshcraft, which again is a survivability tool that you have. I'm currently playing Necrolord, but I played the entire season 2 as Night Fae, and I do plan to switch back to Night Fae most likely later this season. I'm just kind of exploring stuff. But yeah, to summarize, both are perfectly fine. Now builds, what legendary do I want to use? I've seen some people trying different legendary. I myself prefer to play with Echoes of the Great Sundering, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Echoes has the best single target damage among all Mythic Plus legendaries except Windspeaker, which is pretty much used as only in raiding, never in Mythic Plus. Echoes also has a very good burst damage outside of major cooldowns. Now if you compare this with a Seed build, which is the Night Fae legendary, Echoes has a lot higher burst outside of cooldowns, which is pretty much your Storm Elemental, right? You also have very good funnel single target damage and also prior damage when you AoE in the packs. Give an example, when you fight like let's say 10 mobs and you have one mob with like super high HP, you can focus it with your Earth Shocks, therefore you provide a lot more single target power damage to the target, therefore you speed up the run. So I do prefer to play Echoes in every single dungeon, every single week, every single kind of affix combination or group compositions. So Echoes all the way. And another viable build can be aka Seed build, which is only available for Night Phase. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to show you a screenshot of how the build looks like, or at least the legendary. It's pretty much your main elemental has around a minute and 48 seconds of CD instead of like 2 minutes and a half. He also gets a crit chance based on how many ticks you get out of your Fate Transfusion, but keep in mind you cannot use your Fate Transfusion as a utility, aka heal to your party, and it only restricts you to play Night Fae. So at the end of the day, it's situational. You might want to run it, but I prefer Echoes all the way. Next question is, what talents do I play for Mythic Plus? Well, very simple. The talent tree is the same as in Season 1, nothing has changed, and I recommend playing Storm Elemental for every single dungeon, every single week, doesn't matter if it's tyrannical, fortified. You want to play the bingo build, which is pretty much Storm Elemental, Aftershock build, kind of a lotto. You know, you just gamble. If you get procs, you do massive damage. If you don't get procs, you still do massive damage. So I'm gonna show you a screenshot of my build pretty much in every single dungeon right here. Alright, next on the menu is gonna be Conduits. What are gonna be my main potency conduits? Now keep in mind, these potency conduits remain the same regardless of the Covenant you play. So the two potency conduits that you want to run are always going to be Call of Flame and Shake the Foundation. Those are your basic best Mythic Plus conduits that you want to focus on. When it comes down to finesse and endurance, I don't really have a choice. I mean, you do have a choice, but it's like there's only like 3 options which are as good, right? A must endurance conduit I would say is Vital Curation, which pretty much increases your HP or your own HP based on the item level of the conduit every time you have your earth out, kind of a second defensive. And also I like to play with the Anima Sphere, which pretty much heals you for a percent of your maximum health every 10 seconds, depending on your maximum HP. As a finesse conduit, I like to play always with the Thunderous Pose, pretty much like a small movement speed increase every time you press the Ghost Hoof. which is, you know, pretty neat. Or you can play also Totemic Search, which is pretty much reduces the cooldown of your Tremor, Earthbind, and Cap Totem by like 9 to 10 seconds, depending on the Conduit level. So yeah, those are gonna be my options, and I use them for every single key. Next to the menu is stats. What stats do I want to have? In my opinion, the magical stats, what you want to aim for is between 25 and 30% crit without any other crit amplifier being from Trinket or being from Anima Powers from Mythic Plus, which by the way I'll cover later on. Haste value should be anywhere between 20 and 25%. I would say the more the better, but I prefer to be at least 20%. Verse values, I like to play with around 15% for like high to mid-end key. If you play like low keys, you can get away with like 10% or even less. Mastery 0, legit avoid mastery. You wanna make sure that you avoid all mastery, put anything else, put mastery. Those are the stats you wanna aim for. When it comes down to enchants, pretty much your enchant should be based on exactly what you're missing. For example, if you're short on haste, enchant haste. If you're short on crit, enchant hit. Therefore, you also can gem crit or gem haste, depending on what you're missing. Your chest enchant should be the passive, you know, the flat 30 all stat, and weapon enchant should be always Celestial Guidance for every single Mythic Plus key. You play Sinful Revelation only for raiding, not in Mythic Plus. Alright, trinkets. What trinkets do you want to have as a shaman in Mythic Plus? Now, I do enjoy having a two trinkets, which are in my opinion the best trinkets. Batch, which is in my opinion the best trinket for shaman in Mythic Plus. It's only obtainable through PvP. It has a minute cooldown, and every time you use it, you kind of sync it with your Storm Elemental, so you can create this like a minute massive burst with your Batch. So definitely Batch. Now if you don't have Batch, you can also get away with anything on your trinket. I prefer to play with the Ruby if I don't have Batch on, which drops from Theater of Pain. Pretty good trinket. As a passive, I like to play with the Necromancer Tome, which is the one from a Kyoto trinket. It is pretty good, and it has a pretty high uptime, around 60% or so, even higher I would say. You can also play with a Titanic Ocular Gland, which is a D trinket from the Eye of the Jailer. Pretty good. Now if you're a beginner player, you might take too much damage, therefore your uptime on that trinket might be not as high, but generally pretty solid trinket. Now if you don't raid at all, you can also play the Unbound Changeling, which drops from Mists. Pretty good trinket. Or you can try the PvP static trinket, which gives you a passive haste and on-proc intellect. That's also fine, but I prefer to play Unbound Changeling over that trinket. Alright, so now speaking about Season 2, there's one thing that you should always acknowledge, and that is the Domination Sockets. Now, Domination Sockets are not must to have if you're like, you know, aiming for like 20-21 keys. I would say Domination Sockets, only the effect works in Mythic Plus, but not the tier set bonus, right? The tier set bonus works only in Raid, Torghast, or Courtier. I would suggest you to have 3, I would say, baseline damage increase gems, and that is the Shard of This, which is pretty much the one from the Unholy Shard. That is what you want to rank to rank 5. Shard of Beck is the Blood Gem Shard, which pretty much increases your damage by a certain percent based on the health difference between you and the target. And then you want to go for Shard of Core, which is pretty much a percent damage increased every time you attack a new target, and that damage is increased for 20 seconds, up to maximum of 3%. Which again, it is pretty good, but it's not like a major DPS increase. Now you can have up to 5 Domination Shards, but only 3 can kind of give you damage. The rest 2 are optional, and they're more of a defensive shards. I would say the better defensive shard out there could be the Shard of Cure, which pretty much gives you an absorb shield every couple of seconds, kind of the BFA resounding protection in a way, right? But a smaller version of it. So definitely go for that. And as a 5th shard, you can play whatever you want. You can get a leech one, speed one, you can get the increased maximum health by a specific value. Anything works. It doesn't really matter what you play, I guess, as a last one, whatever you have the highest item level. But I would suggest you to level first those 3 that are what I call the main DPS shards, and afterwards you can focus on the defensive shards. Alright, and one of the most asked questions this season has been, what do you play in Mythic Plus? What kind of Anima Powers do you take, and exactly what you should be focusing on? Now, first thing I would like to say, the go-to Anima Power should be taken on Fortified Week, or even on the Radical, is Champion's Brand, which pretty much increases your crit by a specific value every time you pick it up. right? Now, on Tyrannical week, I like to play with Necrotic Wounds in every single dungeon, right? But on 45 week, most of the time I do play double Champion Brand. Now, if you play Explosive or Spiteful, you can play Bowstring, which pretty much procs out of every time you kill Explosive or Spiteful Shade, right? You can also play a Bowstring instead of a Champion's Brand on like those kind of weeks, but the general build is on Fortified, double Champion's Brand, except in Theater of Pain. Theater of Pain, you always play at least one Necrotic Wounds. And on Tyrannical week, you want to play one Champion's Brand, one Necrotic Wounds in every single dungeon. That's it, pretty simple. At last, gameplay. I think that's kind of the most important aspect of creating the guide. And I would say there are 4 fundamentals of Shaman Mythic Plus. First one, AoE, right? AoE I consider more than 4 mobs or 4 mobs, right? In AoE, you never want to be casting a Flame Shock. You never want to cast your Covenant specific ability like Primordial Wave or Fate Transfusion. You don't want to cast Flame Shock, you don't want to cast Lava Surge, Lava Burst. You want to cast Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, Earthquake, depending if you play with Equals build. You should be playing, by the way. That's for AoE. You spam that all the time. Now, to the question, should I cast only Earthquake or should I cast only Empowered Earthquakes? The answer is depends. I myself prefer to cast only Empowered Earthquakes unless the mobs are too low HP. In this case, I usually blast few Earthquakes without being empowered. It depends on the target HP. If they're like super low HP, you can just bang few Earthquakes out there. It doesn't really matter. Now, whenever you talk about 3 targets, on 2 targets, it depends on a Covenant. On 2 targets, you always want to keep 2 Flame Shocks on a target. You wanna funnel the Lava Burst and Lava Surges, and whenever you don't have anything, you wanna make sure that you cast your Chain Lightning. On 3 targets, if you play Necrolord, you want to keep your Flame Shocks on a target, 1 Primordial Wave, cast a Lava Burst or Lava Surge depending on the procs, and then keep maintaining the Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, Earthquake, never the Flame Shock. As a Night Fae, you scrap that, you want to cast your Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, Earthquake all the way, you don't cast Flame Shocks whatsoever, right? Obviously, once you have your Storm Elemental out, you forget about those stuff. Once you have Storm Elemental out, doesn't matter if it's like a 2 target, 3 target, 4 targets, you want to be casting Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, Earthquake, Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, Earthquake. It's pretty simple and straightforward. At last, if you do have any more questions, you guys can always comment on my stream. I stream pretty much every single day from 10 AM Central European Summer Time until like 7 PM. So every day, like for 7-8 hours a day. You can pop in, say hi, ask me any questions you guys have in terms of the guides. Most of my logs, so most of my votes are also public. Any information, especially extra information, can be found on my Patreon, can be found on Discord, or just pretty much in my votes in Twitch chat as well. So make sure to come around, ask me anything you want, or just leave a like below, leave a comment, and support the channel. At last, what are my thoughts on Shaman this season? I feel like Shaman right now is in extremely good position. LA Shaman is shaping to be one of the best revenge classes to have in every single Mythic Plus group, and also one of the most fun classes to play. So I would definitely recommend you guys play the class, even as an ult or main, doesn't really matter. It's so strong in Mythic Plus, it's strong in PvP, and it's also very good in raiding. So all around, very good base. I'm pretty happy how my class turned out to be. So yeah, you guys are gonna do some crazy numbers, as you guys have seen me do on Twitch. Alright. I guess what I said before, maybe we should put it here. Alright, that was everything for now, guys. Appreciate you watching. Make sure you leave a like, follow, check Twitch, check Patreon, all that kind of stuff. Peace out. Until next time.